Good morning. Thank you for joining us again. My name is Julia Watson. I am the project coordinator at Heiser Hearing Institute and Heiser Hearing and Language Academy. We have our weekly radio show where we talk about Heiser Hearing and Language Academy and the work they've been doing in the community. Heiser Hearing and Language Academy, which was originally known as the Louisville Deaf Oral School, started in 1948 as a combined sponsorship between the Women's Club of Louisville and the Kiwanis Club of Louisville. It started with just 3 children in the basement room of the Women's Club with only 3 teachers who each volunteered to instruct students on Saturday mornings. By the end of the first school year, 11 children had enrolled. The purpose of this was to empower these children with hearing loss and speech communication disorders to help them become prepared for school and improve their ability to communicate. It was also used to provide service and support to their parents. Today, HHLA continues this by serving preschool and kindergarten-age children and providing early intervention programs. Students have access to audiologists, speech-language pathologists from our clinics, and teachers that specialize in deaf and hard of hearing students. As a nonprofit, the Institute has grown a lot since the beginning, and Heiser strives to provide hearing healthcare to all people, and especially to those who are in the most need throughout our community. So today we have 2 wonderful guests with us. I am joined with Barbara Martin. Barbara is the Director of Behavioral Health and Social Services for Heiser Hearing Institute's Integrative Counseling and Wellness Clinic. And I'm also joined by Michai Lombardi, who is a social work specialist for Heiser's Integrative Counseling and Wellness Clinic. She will soon graduate in May to become a therapist for the deaf and hard of hearing community. And she's also a former student of Heiser Hearing and Language Academy. This morning, Barb and Michai are going to discuss Michai's childhood, her time at LDOS, and her educational journey. And Barb will talk about her story and the behavioral aspect of working with children who are deaf and parents of deaf and hard of hearing children and what that looks like. Today, Barb will be speaking for Michai as she uses ASL. So start it off. Hi, Barb. Can you start by talking about you and what you do at Heiser?
I can. So, Michai, right now while I speak, is it okay if you follow the closed captions that I have up for you? Okay. My name is Barbara Martin, and I'm the Director of Behavioral Health for the Heiser Hearing Institute Integrative Counseling and Wellness Center. We just started this aspect of the Heiser Providers of Service in January of 2020, just before the pandemic hit. I'm a graduate of the University of Louisville Kent School of Social Work. Go Cards. I'm a licensed clinical social worker for the state in the state of Kentucky, and I came to Heiser with 40 years of experience with children who are deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind. The very first experience with children of this nature is my own son. So I am a MODA, a mother of a deaf adult. And Mick is 40, he'll be 41 in September. So back in the days, we didn't have newborn hearing screening, which we do at Heiser through several of the hospital systems here. When a child is identified as deaf or hard of hearing, they usually are given immediate access to intervention. But I had 3 really well-known pediatricians in Southern California and an audiologist who told me my son wasn't deaf. I was exposed to gestational rubella, and I contracted the disease when I was pregnant with him in the last week of my first trimester, and he was born deaf as a result. That's the only thing that we had going on, but I knew he couldn't hear me, and nobody would listen to me. I started learning sign language when he was 12 months old, and he didn't receive his diagnosis until he was 2. So he did get early intervention with me. I continued sign language classes for 5 years, and I ended up becoming an educational interpreter for the deaf. So I served as an educational interpreter for the deaf for about 33 years through the year 2016. And I ended up specializing in working with deaf-blind children as well in educational settings, tore my rotator cuff, and there went my career. So I was not ready to give up that career and working with my passion, deaf and hard of hearing. So I brought my life experience together, went back to the Kent School of Social Work, and achieved a Master of Science in Social Work, specialized in psychosocial oncology. So I work in the medical model. So at Heiser Hearing Institute with our clinic, our hearing services clinic, we see patients with hearing loss and ear-related disorders. So not just a place that dispenses hearing aids and tests for hearing, which we have a large part of us that does that, but we also treat patients who have vestibular disorders, dizziness, a condition called BPPV, benign paroxysmal positioning vertigo, and tinnitus or tinnitus, tomato, whatever you want to call it. Tinnitus is actually ringing in the ears. And I have that condition myself. But it causes people, that and being dizzy causes a lot of stress, you guys. And so we identify patients who are at higher levels of stress, and they're referred to me at my clinic for non-pharmaceutical strategies through integrative approaches. And so, as my husband says, just tell him to settle down. We can't do that there. We actually have a protocol and a strategy that involves our whole team to treat the whole patient. So we provide patient-centered care among all of us. We have the school, we have the hearing services clinic, the vestibular services clinic, and a tinnitus part. And now, for the last 3 years, we have behavioral health. And we opened right before the pandemic shut down. And you guys, I never had a day off. We kept growing and busy. And now Makia here is with me, and she's my first practicum student. She's deaf herself, culturally deaf. So she uses American Sign Language to communicate. And so I'm going to turn it over to her now, if that's okay, and give her the ability to talk about her journey, her story, starting with the fact that she was a student at the Louisville Deaf Oral School. And so as she signs, I'm going to be voicing for her. If any of you are interested in seeing this with her signing, we will have this posted on our website somewhere or our social media accounts so that people can look at this. Okay, take it away. Hi, everyone. My name is Makia Lombardi, and I was born deaf. But my parents didn't find out until I was 2. So I finally went to LDOS after that, Louisville Deaf Oral School, and I used an FM system and some hearing processors behind my ears. I started learning words. There were labels of words everywhere. I was around people who signed, and I developed some speech to myself. And my experience was amazing. I traveled, we did lots of field trips, and I learned a lot about the community. I was involved in everything. So when I grew up, I decided after high school, I wanted to go in 2011 through 2016. I went to Gallaudet University, which is an all-deaf university, and I got my bachelor's degree in social work. And I finished, and I came back to Kentucky. And I worked about 1.5 years in the foster care industry, and I was case manager, and then I decided I wanted to become a therapist for deaf and hard of hearing. So that's how I decided to go back to the University of Louisville and get my master's degree, an MSSW, a Master of Science in Social Work. So I'm really thankful for Barb, because she's taught me a lot and she's given me this opportunity for internship. I learned so much in the last year, and I'll be working with deaf and hard of hearing patients with full access to communication. And I'm looking forward to being able to provide services for that group of folks. Thank you. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's pretty awesome. And Makia, I'm so proud of you. This girl does not play. Okay, she has remained through all the things we have in life. She's had her own share of struggles like everyone does. Right now there's a big focus on mental health, right? not to say that she has mental health issues, but everyone struggles with something once in a while. And that's especially true for people who are deaf and hard of hearing because they often lack access to communication. Oftentimes, they're denied access to communication in educational settings, healthcare settings, community settings. Um, and so it's our also as social workers, it's our goal to be advocates for that. And so that starts very early on. So you wanted me to speak about HHLA,
Yes.
the Heiser Hearing and Language Academy. My office is in the Hearing Services Clinic, but we also serve children at HHLA that experience difficulty coping with their hearing loss. Maybe their families aren't involved, or maybe they don't have family support systems sometimes. So Makia, she's a role model for what a successful deaf adult looks like when they grow up. You can do anything you want except hear, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we want to instill in our children at the Heiser Hearing and Language Academy. And we do that very early on. All of our teachers sign. Um, and Makia is there as a role model who's deaf and hard of hearing herself. And they have therapist access now. Makia and I, until right now, I'm one of 2 therapists in the whole state who are signing
Wow.
capable, fluent for direct services for deaf and hard of hearing. Makia will be 3rd. And so I hope someday soon she will replace me. So this is a multi-generational thing we have going on here. We have kids, we have adults, we have adolescents that we serve, we have high school kids, young adults, young families, working with families early on who have children who are identified as deaf and hard of hearing are so important to know that there's services like ours available, because often parents will be told, oh, your child has a sensory neural hearing loss and it's severe to profound. What does that mean? Oh, well, your child is deaf. Clonk. I mean, it's like the earth just shattered. It never did for me. I was busy fighting to get his diagnosis, right? But that doesn't happen for most. Most have a big denial component. But seeing and normalizing what it is to have families and support systems. I serve on the board, the Kentucky State Board. I'm sorry, Kentucky State Board for Kentucky Hands and Voices. I'm the secretary of the board. I've been there for about 8 years. So we are a parent organization that supports parent choices, whether that be use of cochlear implants, hearing aids, sign language, speech and language support. And my point to that is we give everything we possibly can and also incorporate family goals that they want to see happen. And we provide them with the resources at Heiser that will fill anything they want to do. So with that said, children who are deaf have to be able to hear the language to be able to develop speech. And sometimes that's just not possible. Whether the cochlear implant doesn't go fully into the cochlea or the residual hearing is not enough to support understanding of speech, maybe the child will be a signer. And we have one right here who is a signer who's getting her master's degree. So, you can do anything except hear, and we want to get that message out there. The ability to speak is not connected to intelligence. In fact, if you teach a hearing baby to sign before they can speak, studies show that those children, when they start to speak and go through school, they have IQs on the average of 10 points higher because they were able to start communicating to express their wants, needs, likes, dislikes, their feelings. That's behavioral health, guys. And when you can't express your feelings, that's where we have behaviors start happening. So we like to get with those kids, and Makia's working with some of our kids in school, and so am I. And we get kids talking about their feelings, and honey, let's say what's wrong and make it right. So that's the behavioral health aspect. And we're here to provide counseling and consultation for parents and families who have children who are born with hearing loss so that they understand their options, because options are important, and there are. You can have American Sign Language and have your child go to the Kentucky School for the Deaf, where there's dorms and a cultural presence. You can have a child in a day school, such as Heiser Hearing and Language Academy. And we pretty much, well, we have children who use American Sign Language, children who use Signing Exact English for literacy development. And we are able to provide that. We also have speech and language for those children who are able to understand things orally and use of cochlear implants. And so we have this whole spectrum of possibilities. And parents out there who are listening, we really want you to know your options that are available so you can make informed choices for what's right for your family, because what's right for your family is really what works.
I'm curious what the most rewarding part for both of you is from working at Heiser.
Go ahead, Makia. What's the most rewarding thing you have accomplished since working at Heiser since last August? So for me, I learned more about the organization and how it works, and how the team works together and collaborates. I've learned about so many things in the therapeutic setting through, working with patients and having hands-on experience. And I understand now about, how I can work with deaf and hard of hearing people through that therapeutic process as a provider myself. And I also hope that they will apply to school and more people will apply to school and will grow our practice. So that's the most rewarding thing for me, that I passed with all A's, I think. So, yeah, so I understand how, everything operates, and, and how that connects and with mental health. And Barb has been a role model to me for that too. So I understand everything is so clear. I didn't tell her to say that, I swear. Okay, and for me, oh man, okay, so I actually was a technical assistance provider as an independent contractor in 2004 through 2008 at Heiser. And in that role, I went all over the state working with educational systems, staff, interpreters, students, families who wanted to use Signing Exact English and English-based systems. It's something that I've been an instructor since 1988 for the C Center, and I'm a national instructor for that modality. I also am fluent in American Sign Language, and that was another aspect. So for me, I've taken almost 41 years of life experience together with business background for developing the business and the clinic presence as a business. When I arrived, our electronic health record was only for audiology and speech, so I had a hand in helping to develop behavioral health platforms for reporting and billing and things, along with our team that supported me. And then I also have brought to the table my degree. I was also a holistic practitioner providing integrative, let's call it Eastern medicine, as since 1992. So I've taken life experience, my experience with deaf and hard of hearing, my interpreting experience of 33 years across all settings, legal, mental health, medical, educational settings, being a mom, a family member, a Master of Science in Social Work, and oncology. The medical model was really important to me because people who experience cancer also lose their hearing due to chemo and radiation. And I'm also a cancer survivor. So that aspect was really cool. So this has been like a crossroads, and our management team was wonderful enough to be able to give me the opportunity to start this clinic in 2020, and I feel like I'm home. That's the most rewarding thing for me. And Makia has one more thing to add. So I also find it very rewarding for I grew up without parents. I've had a lot of emotional things I've had to work through myself. And so, how do you cope with this? I didn't have anybody teaching me family skills or anything like that, and how to manage myself and the changes in life that I went through every day. I went to school, I went home. I had a lot of things that I needed to work on. So, since I was growing up then and having all those experiences that I worked through, I became more aware and wanted to become a therapist so that I could help other deaf and hard of hearing people get through life with full access to communication and with someone who's deaf or hard of hearing themselves. Amen, sister. Amen. That's Barb speaking. So that was Makia, and I was voicing for her because she uses American Sign Language to communicate. And that is a language that doesn't have a spoken or written equivalent. So you notice her voice wasn't turned on. Do you want to say a few words with your speech turned on? No, she does not want to. Yeah, so anyway, I was voicing for her, and I think you're pretty amazing. Yeah, yeah, I'm proud to have you on our team. So we hired Makia at the on April 1st at the end of her practicum, and we got her trained and certified to at first before graduation, before she passes her first level of social work clinical licensure exam. That's a hard 4-hour test. She is going to be starting to study for that right after graduation, but meanwhile, she's able, instead of working a night shift job on an assembly line, she's now working with us at Heiser. I'm going to cry. She doesn't have to work at night, sleep for 2, 3 hours, get on her bicycle and ride 16 miles to get a bus to come to work. I'm telling you, this girl doesn't play. I'm so proud of her. And I'm so proud to have her as a part of our team as a targeted case manager now. So she helps people navigate through community resources and healthcare. All right.
So I have one more question for Makia. What is the biggest misconception about being a deaf person?
Well, biggest misconception I've heard my whole life. People think we're slow. No, that's just not the way it goes. Because when we say we're not slow, it's because you don't know sign language. That's the point. There's a translation, and that's a big understanding that sign language is for people who are slow. But we use sign language and we're fully fluent and we can do anything. And that's what I'm doing right now. That's right. This is Barb. You can do anything except hear. Yep. My son is the same way. Cool.
Thank you. One more question for Barb. You said that you've had so much experience with using sign language. You even taught a sign language lesson last week that I went to, which was wonderful. Can you just talk about your journey with learning how to sign with your son and the importance of anyone learning sign language?
Sure, sure. So, as I said, I started signing with my son before he was diagnosed. So I knew the alphabet since I was in second grade. My BFF, who's still in my life, taught me the alphabet. We were trying to hide from her little sister during nap time, and we hunkered down in the back of her mom's Oldsmobile. And she taught me the sign language alphabet while we sat on the floorboard. So that was second grade. And then I used to communicate with finger spelling in high school. When my son was diagnosed deaf, I was fortunate to be in Southern California. He was in a system called the Orange County Department of Education. It was a regional program for deaf and hard of hearing. And I went on a tour of the school before he was enrolled there, and the principal took me, and at the end of the tour in the office, she handed me a Signing Exact English dictionary, and she said, here's your book. It's a gift from the Parent Guild, like the PTA, and we will see you every Monday night from 6 to 8 p.m. where we have sign language classes. We have beginning, intermediate, advanced, and some of our advanced students go on to continue vocabulary development. We have signing babysitters, and we have so signing babysitters, and we also have a sibling class. So our whole family signed. My husband isn't mixed biological father. He came into our life when Mick was 4, and he went to sign language class the very first Monday after our first date. So I snagged a good one, folks. We've been married for 36 years, and he's been the assistant coach for football, soccer, basketball, baseball, and he was an assistant Boy Scout leader. So Mick had access to everything he wanted to do, and he had full access to communication so that he could learn all the rules. And so that's why I sign. Mick lost all of his hearing about 5 years ago due to tinnitus, and he lost all of his hearing. And I heard my husband and son in the background talking. I was in my bedroom and I'm talking about the detailed aspects of the car hauling business. And I smiled to myself because I knew that my husband and my son were signing to each other fully with complexity. And that's why I sign. That's why we sign. Our whole family signs.
Well, thank you so much to Barb and Nakia for coming in today for the show and talking about yourself and what important work you do at Heiser. And thank you to everyone who's listening. Again, Heiser Hearing and Language Academy exists to educate and empower children with hearing loss and speech and language disorders to ensure a successful future. If you have a parent who needs resources or has questions, feel free to call Heiser Hearing and Language Academy at 502-636-2084. And to learn about us, you can visit our website at www.thehearinginstitute.org and make sure to look at our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram. Again, thanks for listening, and I hope you join us again next Saturday at 9:30 a.m.
All right, perfect.